A wise man once said, "Curiosity is the first step to infidelity." Each person will interpret these words in their own way, but there is no doubt that a strong union of a man and a woman is impossible without loyalty. And that's exactly how it was for the couple featured in our story today. Andy Crouch from Texas dreamed of becoming a police officer since he was a little boy and devoted every free minute of his time to achieving this goal. When the young man turned 22, he successfully graduated from the academy, having received the coveted badge and the police uniform. The man worked for the good of the state from dusk till dawn. The countless assignments on the job took up all of his free time, but even despite being successful at his work, Andy was lonely and dreamed of starting a family. Then one day, he noticed a waitress in a local pizza shop. She won Andy's heart with her gentle smile and kindness. He was so infatuated by her that the frequent visits to the pizza place soon turned into a romance. This sweet girl turned out to be Lily Doherty. Several dates later, the couple was on cloud 9. Andy realized that he had finally met the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. When Andy proposed to the woman of his dreams and she agreed, he became the happiest man in the world. Andy and Lily bought a small but cute house, a nice car, and enjoyed their happy married life. The local police officers were very happy for their friend because being married made Andy even more diligent at his job. Overall, this union of people in love seemed to be perfect. However, as it often happens in life, there was a but. Andy Crouch always had a friendly disposition. He often invited his colleagues over for a barbecue on weekends. Once he even invited his chief, whose attendance was a huge honor for an ordinary police officer. The man's name was Gareth Dempsey. Despite his status, Gareth was very friendly with all of Andy's guests, and especially to his wife. Andy couldn't have been happier about the fact that his wife quickly established contact with the chief, because this gave him an even better chance at getting the desired promotion. Ever since, Gareth had become a regular guest at the Crouch's house, sometimes even coming over when Andy was out on assignments. It seemed a bit wrong to Andy, but the quality of his work was still more important. And to be honest, he wasn't too worried because he trusted both his beloved wife and his boss. In turn, Lily always bragged about how nice it was talking to Gareth, often asking her husband how the chief was doing. Honestly, all Andy had was his suspicions, but one incident changed everything. One day, as Andy was working on yet another assignment from his boss, he drove past his house and decided to surprise his wife with donuts from the local shop. But the police officer's good intentions turned out to be pointless. As he was approaching the house, he saw his wife through the window. She was sitting on a sofa in the living room, hugging Gareth. It didn't look like they were just friends. The surprised police officer tried to get his emotions under control, chasing away bad thoughts. However, as he came to his senses a little, Andy decided not to rush, but rather spy on the couple and catch them red-handed, so to say. Thus, a few days later, Andy told his wife he was going to visit his parents. Instead, he parked his car a few blocks away and came back to the house in a rented car. He staked out the house, expecting his boss to show up soon. Andy tried to convince himself that it was all in his head. But soon enough, his whole life collapsed like a house of cards. Gareth arrived late in the afternoon and confidently went inside Andy's house. Andy kept surveilling the situation and only went inside about 20 minutes after they turned off the lights. The rest was like a plot of a cheap movie. Andy found the couple in the bathroom. There was obviously no point in denying anything. However, instead of apologizing, Gareth Dempsey was outraged and gave Andy an angry speech, promising to fire him without reason. Thus, in one instant, the poor man lost two things he loved the most in his life: his wife and his job. Andy simply couldn't comprehend why his wife would do this to him, because he worked tirelessly for the good of the family, and their relationship seemed to be developing perfectly well. Andy's colleagues were appalled by the police officer's dismissal. They tried to convince him that it wasn't the end of the world, but Andy was devastated. He couldn't find his place in life anymore, so he started seeing a psychologist. No one knows how this story would have ended if it wasn't for something Andy's friends said. Their words stayed with him for a long time, and eventually, the former police officer decided to do something about his situation. Crouch took a non-standard approach and went to the city court, accusing his captain of alienation of affection. Such cases are rare in the United States, but nevertheless, there have been a few cases with rulings in favor of the claimant. And maybe Andy would have failed, but all of their colleagues sided with him, demanding compensation for moral damage for Andy and the dismissal of their cheating chief. Andy's lawyer was able to provide enough evidence to prove that the couple had a happy marriage before Gareth came along, and thus the court ordered Gareth to pay $500,000 to the claimant, as well as to reinstate him on the job. Andy was very happy with this turn of events. However, the top management later dismissed Gareth with disgrace. So what happened next with Andy, his wife Lily, and Gareth? That same top management finally paid attention to Andy's performance, and by unanimous decision appointed him for the position his former boss had held. Moreover, everyone was surprised at how calm and calculating he was in the situation. Learning that his wife was cheating on him with his boss, he didn't just run into the house, fists out, and didn't resort to using his gun. Instead, he kept his cool and made smart decisions. As for his wife, when she heard about Andy's promotion, Lily kept throwing herself at Andy, begging him for forgiveness. She kept assuring him that she was done with Gareth and that she would never cheat on Andy again. But the newly appointed chief of the local police department didn't budge. Moreover, he understood perfectly well that Gareth was no longer a good enough option for Lily. He was married, but his wife also left him, and soon he would have to sell the house in order to pay Andy's compensation. Also, there was a good chance that no one would want to hire him now. Thus, everyone's lives got ruined. A happy marriage was destroyed in an instant. Lily was even forced to look for a small apartment to rent, and she had to return to work in the pizza shop because even her parents refused to let her stay at their house. There are many similar cases in life, but this one is a perfect example of what a seemingly innocent flirting between a married woman and a stranger can lead to. Moreover, this is a true story that happened in the USA, but the names and pictures of the main characters had to be changed for various reasons. However, I don't think that makes this story any less meaningful. So I wish you to never find yourself in this kind of a love triangle, and to be careful when choosing your soulmate.